Hello friends, I want to go over a few things on the Subarus with you. This is '05 Baja. I removed the 2.5 because I'm sick of dealing with it. I had it fixed, but then it lost, it stretched a head bolt, and then it lost a thread insert for a head bolt on the other head. So I just took the whole thing out and dropped in a 2.2. This is an older 2.2. This is an original EJ22. You can't see the stamp, but the others are like a 225 or 223. As you can tell, when you look down in here, let me zoom in on it, the head bolts, right there, do you see that head bolt? That's on the outside of the valve cover. And the spark plugs go into the head, not through the valve cover, so you don't have to worry about that either. But that's, I think, 95. I think they stopped making these in 99, 2000. I'm not sure. But these are the best ones out there. They're very reliable. These particular heads have single port exhaust instead of dual port. You can also see that there's a difference in the belt tensioner. There's also a difference in the belt. That's a pulley off of an EJ25 or EJ253. I sacrificed my my other pulley for a quad cam motor. This is just a single overhead cam, but it's the same. It's the same pulley, other than the belt. The area where the belt runs is a skinny, it takes a skinny belt on the EJ25, and the EJ22 takes a wide belt. So other than, except, how do I word this? Instead of buying a new pulley, I just put an EJ25 pulley on there, and I've got like 10 belts hanging, so I took a belt and I trimmed it down. It seems to work just fine, but that'll have to be replaced with an EJ22 pulley, and I'm going to have to get another belt for the tensioner because the tensioner belts are not the same. So there's the tensioner itself, the tensioner bolt, and the sprockets for the camshafts are different between the EJ22 and the EJ25. I'm going to say the older EJ25 because they have EJ25s that have the, or EJ22s that have the valve cover where the spark plugs go in, but I'm going to call them like a 223 or something. It's a later version. Anything else? So I don't think there's anything else. I took this intake off of the EJ22. This is the EJ22 intake. That's your purge valve. That can just lay there. I'm going to take that off, basically, and just leave it plugged in to make the computer happy. I had to change out the wiring on the EJ22 intake manifold to accommodate this. I think it's an EJ253. Oh, let's take a look. Don't make a liar out of me. What do we got? EJ251 AXF. Okay, so this is an EJ251. The AFX, some changes here. There was one change for sure. I can't find the wire plug. There it is. That wire plug right there went to a newer style EGR valve. And you have to take the old EGR valve off of your 251 intake, plug it into here, and just zip tie it off to the side just to keep the computer happy. And the connections, the injectors are different. This rail is different. These have caps on them, and the plugs are different. The plugs are upside down on these. So as you can see, I took my EJ22 plugs, cut the wires for the EJ251 wiring harness, and I'm going to solder them on and heat shrink them. They're just twisted on so I can make sure I had pulse and everything else. And I think that's really the only thing you got to be concerned about. Just make sure you take your little guy here, your pressure regulator valve for your fuel rail, and run him up to that little spigot on the intake. There's a little port there for him to plug in. Make sure you got the right return going back to the fuel tank. I left the vent just wide open. It comes out over here. The hose is plugged in, but the vent's right there. And it's just going to draw fumes. It's not going to do anything serious. I got one port that I added there. I thought I was going to need it for the purge valve or something crazy. I didn't add it. And finally, you can see that flex plate back there underneath of everything. You have to change your flex plate because an EJ22 flex plate will not bolt up to an EJ251, or I don't even think a 25 torque converter. This is an ET4 transmission, so that makes a difference. The torque converter stays with the transmission. Do not ever trade out your torque converters and your starters. They have to match up, so leave it in the car. If you got an EJ22 and you want to do this swap, take your intakes off, set them side by side, try to find an EJ251 to do this, and then trade the wiring harness. I'll tell you why here in just a second. But when you get your wiring harness changed, make this little change when you do your wiring harness for your connections on your injectors, and then make sure you leave your purge valve hanging out if you don't have emissions in your area, but leave it hanging out so that you can plumb it up. There's not really much to be concerned about other than the fuel and the coil here. You have to cut the stands off for the coil. I only have one bolt in the coil, but it'll stay and it'll be fine. It's not going to hurt anything. The coil does not have to be grounded. It's completely insulated. Now, the EJ251. The EJ251 has the mass air pressure or manifold absolute pressure, whatever the hell it is, the MAP sensor right here. The EJ22 didn't have that. It had a mass airflow sensor over here by the air box. Okay, so that guy on the EJ25 is over here on top of the intake. I have another intake here somewhere, hang on. Right here, you can see it. See, it went into the top of the intake. And this is an EJ25, but I'm not sure, 250. It's not a 251 or maybe a 251 and not an AFX. I don't know. But this is what you want. You want to find you one of these guys. You might be able to buy one on the internet, but it has the manifold pressure sensor right here, so you don't have to do any drilling into here. I think you can stab it into a port down below somewhere and it might fit if you siliconed it, but this is the best way, is to include it into the throttle plate assembly. This particular setup, the idle control is not going to work the way I have it. I would have to put a nipple into that little area right down there and like silly putty it in or fill it in with JB Weld or something, and then bring it up here to a I think it's going to have to go to a manifold inlet. I've got one down here. That goes to the manifold inlet, and then this you can plumb it back to the air filter if you want to, and that'll allow your idle speed control motor, which is here, to control the idle. That'll let the computer do what it wants to do to be happy. I don't know if it's going to make any difference on the timing or not. I'm going to run this and find out, but you can definitely make that idle speed control motor work. I'm just going to let her ride and see what happens. If I don't like it, it won't take hardly anything to plumb it up. Another reason you want to get that wiring harness changed out is because your control for your power steering. When the power steering pump goes under heavy load, it backs the timing off on the engine. So when this circuit goes low, it'll back your timing off to like 10 degrees. That helps you to not damage the seals in your rack and pinion power. They've been doing this for decades on cars. It's kind of like a limiter. When you turn a corner and you turn too hard and you hit the end of the run on the power steering, and the pump goes into a high pressure situation, it's not going to blow seals on the pump or seep out or damage the pump in any way. I think that covers just about everything. Fuel rail, same. High pressure on the top. In the middle is your return, and on the bottom is your vent. Not really a major issue. The EGR, this comes from the head, so this would actually be an exhaust leak. Plug it off somehow. That way you don't have any exhaust leak up front. Make sure you got all of your vacuum leaks taken care of. This has got a regular PCV on it right here, so that should actually be plumbed up here to the air box. I might do that. I don't know. Haven't decided yet. If you have any questions, ask, and I'll do my best to answer them. So there you have it, EJ251 to an EJ22 old school motor swap. Have a great day. Good luck on your swaps.